of 519, right?
Yep.
Lloyd is a serial entrepreneur. He started many, many companies over the course of the last, 15 years? 20 years? 20 years? You're as old as I am. He did confess to me today that he's actually getting over a cold. So his voice is going. So, I don't know how many questions he'll have in him at the end of the session, but we'll see how it goes. With that, I'm going to turn this over to Lloyd to talk to you about what the role is for the Eastern European development community in social games.
Good afternoon, everyone. First, as David mentioned, I am getting over a cold or something, so please pardon if my voice is not where I'd like it to be, or if I don't show as much enthusiasm as I normally do in a presentation. But as I said, I'm very glad to be here. I'd love to talk about this topic. It's a topic that's very important to me, and I hope I can help you be more successful in the social gaming market. The presentation is split into a few different parts. First, just a little bit of background, similar to what David said about what I've done, just to put into perspective my experiences. Then, how I see the situation for East European social game developers and developers overall in the region and the opportunities in social gaming, why they haven't been more successful on US Facebook, some things that social game developers can do to penetrate the market better, and then just wrapping everything up. So just a little about me, as David mentioned. I'm actually not as serial an entrepreneur as it comes off. I actually started a company in 1993 called Merscom that lasted for almost 17 years. So it was the same company, but we pivoted a lot as the market changed. So we started in the traditional gaming space, making shooters and action games for the core market, moved into the casual download space where we had some success, many top 5 games. Then in the summer of 2009, we moved into social. We abandoned our casual business, and we were acquired by Playdom back in April of 2010. At Playdom, I was responsible for all of our business in Europe, Russia, and Latin America. And I was at Playdom when we were acquired by Disney, still responsible for Europe and Russia and the other regions. And then I was recruited to a company called 519 Games to run it this August. I'd be glad to, I don't want to talk too much about 519 at this session, just to say it's a joint venture between 2 large US media companies. We're focusing on social games, both for the web and for the different mobile platforms. Anyone feel free to email me or come down to our stand on the first floor to find out a little bit more about what 519 is doing. So as I said, I want to first start with an overview of the current situation for developers in this region. When David and I first started discussing the presentation, I think the working title was something to the effect of why aren't developers here more successful on social? And as I started working on the presentation and thinking about it further, I realized that wasn't actually correct. There's a lot of developers in this region who are very, very successful on social networks. There's major social networks in Russia, in Poland, in Hungary, throughout Eastern Europe that are dominated by Russian and Ukrainian and East European developers. Many of these developers are doing quite well, quite profitable on these networks. So to say that they're not successful in social is wrong. And even to say that it's limited to Eastern Europe is wrong. If you look at almost every social network in the world, in the top 5, in the top 10, are multiple games from this region. So I think the first thing I want to say is that there's no reason to say that East European game companies are not successful in social. They are very successful in social. The problem is they haven't been successful on Facebook. There's some numbers here, and what's really stark is how that contrasts to how well you all have done in the casual game market. If you look at Big Fish's top 75, I don't know the exact number, but my guess is 50 of the games will have come from here, and I might be underestimating that. Probably 8 of the top 10 publishers will be from this region. So East European companies dominate the casual game market, but not Facebook. And it's not an issue of the only companies that succeed being American. So whereas in casual, it's really just, there might be a couple from other regions, but it's largely East European, Ukraine, Russia, and then some US companies. On Facebook, you see a lot of successful companies coming out of Asia, being successful in Facebook in the US, Turkish companies, West European companies. But as you can see there, no one from this region has really made a significant impact. So why? The biggest thing in my mind is the marketing demands you have. In casual gaming, even in core gaming, you have publishing partners who can get the product to market. So you create a great game, hand it off to big fish, hand it off to real networks. They'll make sure that people try that game. So if you've done a good game, you'll get the market, you'll succeed, you'll keep going up in the charts, people will talk about it. Despite what my colleague from Wooga said earlier, you do have to spend a lot of money on advertising on Facebook. I'm not as confident as he is that you can get by, kind of on the method that he described. They've done a great job, but the cost of marketing a game on Facebook successfully, in every example that I've seen, and I've been around some major product launches like Gardens of Time and City of Wonder, you see a lot of marketing behind it, and a lot of marketing to keep those people coming back and keep that traction going. As I write here, there's many games, not the Zynga games, but kind of the second tier from a Playdom or an EA, where they'll spend $4 or $5 million a month on a hit game just in advertising. Zynga will spend orders of magnitude higher than that. Also, the big companies have huge user bases that they can drive to their games. That because no one here is in the top 85, no one has a comparable user base. So whereas Zynga has 261 million players every month, if they launch a new game, they can get X% of those people to a game. Same with EA. Playdom to a lesser degree. But no publisher here has that base to start with, and it's very hard to build it up. Also, the development costs. What I often hear is that these costs are inflated, that development is much more efficient in this region. As many people who have worked with me know, I'm one of the cheapest people in the industry. I'm very cost efficient in terms of development. I think a lot of game developers have had trouble working with Merscom in the past for that reason. Yet, to create a good social game, even I have realized you have to spend in close to 7 figures to do it. And that, you look at a Zynga, you look at a Playdom, you look at a Wooga, not a puzzle game, but a true social game that's going to monetize, that's going to be in that top 50, and you're talking a lot bigger investment than you're making in the casual game industry. And the investment doesn't stop with the game. To keep the games are successful because of the maintenance that you put into the game. I was meeting with some people at Zynga a couple months ago, and almost all the senior top people there are working on existing games. They don't work on new games, but the best people are working on Cityville, Empires and Allies, even Farmville still, because that's where they put their priorities. Cityville has, I think, 150, 250 person team running that game. It's incredible the amount of money, the amount of resources that are put into a game to keep it in the top 10, top 25. And that's, those are development costs that, to be quite blunt, a lot of smaller companies just can't compete with. And it's also the structure of the companies. These companies have been built around social gaming. And not only the Playfishes and the Zyngas, but also ones I mentioned from Turkey, from Asia. And by being built around social gaming, they're analytic based. They're not run by game designers. They're not run by creatives. They're run by people who look at the numbers, who build things on an analytic framework. And it's a very different mentality. And although there's a lot of great developers here and people understand analytics very well, I think the programs in analytics are as strong here as they are anywhere in the world. They don't come at the game design in the same way that these other developers approach it, which is why it's difficult not only for East European developers to penetrate the social game market. It's difficult for really anyone from outside the space. And I actually meant to say play first and not play fish there. But you look at companies that really you would think would have done better. Ubisoft has launched about 40 games, and until very recently, they weren't in the top 50. Now they put out the Smurfs, they finally figured it out, and they're doing quite well. But Play First, even with the great IP that they have, they've never been able to penetrate the social market. Big Fish is arguably the best hidden object company ever in the world. You would expect that they would be able to have transferred that and dominate hidden objects the same way on social as they do in the casual space, but they're non-existent there. EA has had to spend almost $1.5 billion on acquisitions because what they've done internally has not been able to work. And it's because the social game market, the Facebook gaming market especially, is so different than anything they've experienced. So what can you do? First, you have to decide, do you want to be on Facebook? It's a difficult market. It's an expensive market. You can make a lot of money on other social networks. You can make a lot of money on mobile. You can still do well in casual. There's a lot of other industries. There's a knee-jerk reaction. I have to succeed in Facebook. Don't bet. Maybe it's not worth it to bet your company on Facebook. You need to objectively look at it and see if Facebook is a good decision for your company. Something I've spoken about in previous years at Casual Connect is a co-production model. Find a U.S. partner who can give you some of those resources. Maybe they can help the development funding so you can create $1 million game. Maybe they can put the team in place so that you can have 25, 50 people running the game after it's live. There are U.S. companies out there who are open to co-productions, and that way you can bring the skills that you already have with the resources and knowledge that they have of the market. Properties are becoming really strong on Facebook. It seems almost every day now that a branded game is coming out based on a television show, based on a movie. The Smurfs has done incredibly well for Ubisoft. As I said, it's transformed their social media efforts, and they've actually done it without having to spend much money on advertising. Dirty Dancing, which is an older property, has actually been one of the fastest growing games ever on Facebook. Zynga, who does not do anything arbitrarily, has branded Venture World with Indiana Jones. They would not have done that if they did not have data to show that there's more, that it's worth it for them. And even a recent popular comedy series in the US, The Big Bang Theory, which was just launched as a Facebook game. So you're seeing getting a strong brand is a way to get market penetration without maybe having to spend as much money. You can license your IP. You can find a partner. Two very comparable companies there. No, but there's companies that already know the market, so you focus on where you're strong, find a U.S. partner who would license the IP, treat it as their own game in that market, and do well with it. Zynga has gone from only creating its own games to very aggressively looking for third-party applications to publish. And obviously they have the power and market share really to make anything that they put their name on a success. And then replicate Wooga's success. Several months ago, or maybe a year ago, they decided to abandon all other social networks. They were very successful on VZNet in Germany. I assume they were on other social networks, and they decided to focus entirely on Facebook. They just shut off their applications on the other social networks and put all their money, all their new development on Facebook. And now they're the #3 company in terms of daily users on Facebook. It's a riskier assessment, but given how competitive the market is, it was a way for them to push themselves ahead of all the other competition. And I think it was more of a mental move because it kept them entirely focused on Facebook. It took away that crutch that they'd make money on VZNet, or in your case, Contacti or Odakosniki. They had to succeed on Facebook. They had to become a big player on Facebook to reach what Jens wanted to do. And by betting it all on Facebook, they became a very successful Facebook company. And then, and go back to kind of my history, is you leverage we did a lot with co-productions, taking IPs. When we went into the casual space, we were relatively late into the market. We didn't have as much funding as our competitors, but we could traditionally came out with games that outperformed the market, were very profitable by finding media partners, doing co-productions, and taking strong IPs. I think that's the same market that you all can do in the social game space. And when you do that, you just need to pick the right partner. You know, make sure the partner can achieve what you want it to achieve. You know, in an earlier slide, I said, you know, maybe find a U.S. partner to license your game to. That doesn't mean a two-person U.S. social game company that's operating out of a coffee shop in Oregon. It's someone who can actually deliver what you need in a partner. Picking the partner is as important as everything else. If you pick the wrong partner, you can have the right game, you can have the right market, you can have the right everything behind it, and you'll fail. So picking the partner, I would say, is the most important part in, you know, finding the right means to, you know, co-produce and move into the Facebook market. So that's about it. I would like to open it up for a couple questions. As you can tell, I'm not feeling great today, so I don't know how much longer I can stand up here, but I do thank you for your patience in listening to me. Thank you.
Thanks, Lloyd, for coming up here and speaking, even though you can barely speak. You sound miserable up there. Questions for Lloyd? Nothing? Well, geez, dude. Actually, I have one question for you.
Okay.
Talk a little bit about U.S. partners. Who are they, and how do you go about finding the right partner? What kind of what should we look for?
I mean, the first thing you look for is DAU. So, I mean, Six Waves is a company that is on the borderline of being a U.S. partner because they're not U.S.-based. They're a big publisher, but a lot of their traffic comes from outside the U.S. So there's a lot of great things about them. I would consider working with them on the right opportunities. They're great people. But if you're really looking for the U.S. market, I think it's really important to have a partner who has deep understanding, deep penetration there. You know, again, you start with a Zynga, and you kind of work yourself down the list. EA's always been open as a game company to working with third-party developers. I'm sure that Playfish is going to be opening their platform, and I know they are working on a publishing platform to work with other partners. Playdom doesn't have a publishing platform right now, but it's something that they've looked at in the past. But again, I think you start with U.S. game companies who have a lot of traffic, and you go from there.
Is there anybody in here who is actually considering or already has built and published a game on Facebook? How'd it go? Excellent. There's one. Any other questions for Lloyd? Well, in that case, I guess we're going to break for lunch really early. And I would encourage you guys to come back after lunch. Can't Stop Games has got to put together a very interesting presentation on using some of the lesser-known Facebook features to drive things like multiplayer matchmaking and new friend making in synchronous online games.